Hello, Mark.
Hi, Gabby. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you. I see
Good.
you had a night out on Tuesday. You scrubbed up and then got yourself a new person to make the trio up for the match of the day
We
presenting roster.
we did. I was. I don't really do these things. I can't remember the last party like that I've ever been to. But if you're on the cover of the Radio Times then have a party at the start of each year for everybody who's been on the cover in the past year. And you and me and Kelly were all on the cover. So me and Kelly went to this Radio Times party. But there were some celeb traitors there, and there were traitors there. And I basically spent the whole night as Kelly's PA, just going round asking different members of the traitors if they'd have a photo with her, and that was it. But with Stephen, we had the three of us had the photo together. Yes,
He was one of the winners of this recent
Yeah.
non-celeb version of
Yeah.
the Traitors.
And do you know what? It was we had. We spoke to Faraz, we spoke to Harriet, we spoke to loads of them, but everybody was so nice. We had such a fun time. But I do think in the cold light of day the following morning that I may have had too much to drink, because there was a long conversation with Stephen and Kelly and myself about whether one of his jumpsuits would work for me to do the FA Cup final.
Well, here at Sports Agent's house, we thought you'd been listening to last week's episode when you were away. We did on fashion in sport, and obviously you'd dressed up a bit for this party, and now you've revealed that conversation. Are we going to see some sartorial twists and turns in the match of the day chair?
Can you imagine? He did say to me, he said, I'm happy to lend you one of the jumpsuits if you want. I was like, yeah, well, maybe that's quite good BBC cross promotion. And then,
Yeah.
in the following morning, I thought, my God, I'm at least 20 years older than him, about 10 stone heavier than him. Nobody wants to see me in a in a jumpsuit cut down to between my nipples for the cup final.
Well, if you remember, the previous presenter of Match of the Day once started the show in his pants. So,
Yes.
I mean, anything is possible, and I wouldn't put it past you. If Manchester United, his was obviously if Leicester won the league. If Manchester United get into Europe, maybe
No,
a
we're not
jumpsuit.
doing. We're not doing that. We're not. There's going to be no bets, no nothing. But yeah.
We've got a big guest coming up a little bit later. Former American footballer, two-time World Cup winner, double Olympic gold medalist Tobin Heath's coming in, talking about her former club Arsenal and suggestions of favouritism surrounding the new Champions Cup. We'll discuss that with her.
The sports agents at global.com. If you want to send us an email, you can message us on social media or via the link in the show notes.
And remember, you can catch up on all past episodes on YouTube, Global Player, or wherever you get your podcasts. And when you're watching or listening, please make sure you subscribe or follow and leave a review.
Next up, why are the English teams dominating the Champions League? We'll talk to football journalist Guillem Balague.
Guillem Balague, welcome to the Sports Agents, joining us from Naples, which actually was the scene of a bit of jeopardy and drama last night. Mark and I were chatting just ahead of speaking to you about the league phase in general. And I was kind of putting it to him that perhaps I'm not sure it's worth the 7 matches or 7 rounds that we go through to get to a night where there is some jeopardy. Have you made your mind up on the league phase yet?
I love it. I really, really like it. First of all, 2 more games. Yes, 2 more trips. Not just for me, but for the fans as well. The opportunity with a new round to actually get the likes of Odo Gleam or Karabakh playing again. The fact that there are more big games and yes, the last day. All of that to me just sounds as a league phase that is giving us a lot, because you don't have to compare it as some have done with the knockout stages. Oh, it's not as exciting as the knockout stages. It's not the knockout stages. You have to compare it with the group stages of previous years, where most last days didn't mean anything. So yeah, I love it.
I mean, I used to find quite a lot of the old group stages very, very dull. And then there have been times this season. So Liverpool, Real Madrid being a prime example of thinking, well, with about 20 minutes to go, Real Madrid they didn't go for it as they would do in a knockout stage, probably because they thought they could manage this league phase and finish in the top 8, which gives you an advantage straight through to the last 16. But actually, that's been proved wrong, hasn't it? They haven't managed it, and they made a right mess of it. And Paris Saint-Germain have done the same again. Paris Saint-Germain were fine, and then have had a dreadful last 2 or 3 games. Inter Milan, even though they won in Dortmund last night, lost 3 on the spin to suddenly drop themselves. And so I keep going back and forth. I keep sort of thinking, are you playing within yourselves at times in the league stage because you know you'll be all right in the end?
But is that because it doesn't matter? Because they've seen last year clubs finish outside the top 8 and then go on and progress through the tournament and win it in PSG's case.
But everything matters. Being in the group in the top 8, it matters a lot. Being in the knockout stages, it matters. Perhaps because you will get criticisms. So it does. Everything matters. And if you had any doubt if you should like or not this league, just what happened at the end of the Benfica Real Madrid game, and not just the drama, but the decisions that were made by the coaches, which is for people that are so thorough in everything they do that they had to just improvise, and in fact with not enough information. So you may have spoken about this, so cut this bit if you have. But so when Mourinho brings 2 players on in the minute 93, he gets told that 3-2 is a good result. They go through. The players walk into the pitch and somebody says, no, we need another goal. What? It's like, but I cannot bring any other players in, right? At the end, when he asked the goalkeeper to go in, the goalkeeper's running towards the Real Madrid goal, not knowing why. He doesn't know if he's got to score. Obviously, they send him, so it must be like, yeah, I need a goal. But he wasn't sure. Gets to the box and says, we need a goal. Ah, right. I get the information then. But last on that one, Real Madrid was defending with, I think it was, they had 9 players at the time, but they were defending with 5 players, I think it was. And they had 3 outside the box. What? You could consider it could be bad for you. No, but they're thinking if we score another goal on the back of this, then we're okay.
Yeah.
Isn't that great?
Yeah. Yeah, and also, it was an unbelievable header. It didn't hit him. He didn't just sort of nod it. It was an unbelievable header.
And not the first time he does it either. Against Porto, he sent him over as well, apparently. Mourinho was explaining. I haven't seen it, but because he's tall and he's a good header of the ball. So that was great. It was great.
Let's get a little bit myopic, shall we, and talk about the Premier League sides and how well they have done in this league phase to end up with 5 in that top 8, and then the 3 other teams representing 3 other leagues, if you like, as well. So, there's not even a multiple in there. And what it means to the Premier League teams, and all, all the leagues get congested. There's domestic competitions, but the Premier League just seems to, have more going on in February and March than other leagues. So for them, and not having a winter break, so for them to not have that next couple of matches, which will take place the 2nd and 3rd week of February, is huge, isn't it? Is it a mark of the strength of the Premier League, or is it just the Premier League teams finding that European football is really suiting them this season, the style of European football?
Both are correct. But before we get there, let me ask you both one thing. It feels like because 5 have gone through the top 8, the impression I've got reading and hearing UK commentators is that, oh God, the Champions League is not what it used to be. Oh, it's so boring because 5 have gone through. And it's like, I can tell you, if that happened in Italy and Spain, would be like, yes, come on, we're the best, whatever. And why we are the best. And why we have to make sure that we replicate so we continue like this. And by the way, wouldn't it be great if we had 4 in the semi-finals? I was on 5 Live this morning and I said to Rick, it would be 4 in the semi-finals for English sides. And he goes, oh, God, that'd be terrible. What? What? No, it'd be great. So there's a little bit of
do you
feeling
know what?
that...
It is exactly that, Guillem. I think a lot of the supporters of each of the teams in there will be delighted for themselves that they're in there, obviously, and won't care what any general narrative is. But they won't want to draw another English. I think the worst possible thing could be going out to another English team in a European competition. So I think, and also, I don't think, I may be contradicted, I don't think the majority of fans of a club who are in the Champions League are worried about doing it for England or wanting other English clubs to be successful. You want yourself to be successful. You don't really want rivals to be successful. So I think on that side, I think that's why we're a bit meh. And then I genuinely think for a lot of journalists and broadcasters, they want they want a bit of variety and probably want to travel to some nice places. Some people,
but
I'm not saying Newcastle isn't a nice place, but do you know what I mean?
Let me add something else. The Premier League is the total priority for pundits, broadcasters, fans. I think managers are changing their mind, and because a lot of them are Europeans, if you like, they like the Champions League. But it kind of feels like what I'm hearing, but of course you're not all one single voice, is, see, the Champions League is not that great. It's not like the Premier League that's really competitive. Won by 2 teams in the last few years, but never mind. So, I think there's a little bit of that. But domination, yes, of course there is. And it's obvious that it's got to do with the wealth. But more importantly, and that's the thing that everybody's trying to copy in Spain, in Italy, in France, everywhere, the fact that you get the best in every department, in every office. There is a professionalization and a high level of performance at every level, and there is monitoring. There's this checking if you can keep that level, otherwise you move away. Perhaps there's
I think it's important to put into context kind of the difference in wealth. And ahead of Arsenal's trip to San Siro, this stat kind of blew me away a little bit, that 4 of Arsenal's summer signings are in the top 5 of all time of Inter's top signings, with only Lukaku ahead of them. And what Arsenal spent last summer is the equivalent of Inter spending of the last 4 years. Now, San Siro is being redeveloped, and the idea is that the money, which will obviously be split between Inter and Milan, AC Milan, will help them to grow again and to bring in more players and strengthen their squads. But that, when people talk of European football, they think of Inter as one of the great clubs. They've won the competition 3 times. They have had some incredible nights and players, including last year's semi-final. But that difference in revenue, wealth, and what they can achieve in terms of going out into the transfer market is stark, Guillem.
Yes, and there's so many examples of that. I mean, the wage list of Marseille is the same as, Aston Villa, which is mid-table in the Premier League. Stuff like that you will find. But now money is converted into success. It's been coming for a long while. That has to be converted into football domination. But there is something else that is happening, which has to do with what's on the pitch. And football, a good team dominates the 4 phases of football: attacking, defending, defensive transition, and offensive transition. The best teams do that. In Europe, you will find PSG and Bayern Munich doing that. That's it, them 2. In England, you've got at least 4 or 5 sides that do that. They have to when they play in the Premier League. They have to be very good at everything, including the new trend, which is to be very, very good in defensive transition. That's what everybody's trying to do. Get the ball as quickly as you can. You don't give space to the others. That's how you dominate a football game these days. They're very, very good at it. In Europe, you don't need sometimes those 4 phases when you've got quality with the players, but you need to prioritize one over the other. And now English sides are doing that. This is what Spanish teams have done throughout the years. In the league, they demanded certain things. When they got to Europe, they did the other things, and they did the other things very well. And that's happening with English sides. They're very, very good at being different depending the context. Now, that is so difficult to beat. And as I said, not even Real Madrid or Barcelona, only PSG and Bayern Munich are at the level of Arsenal, City, even Spurs. All those do the 4 phases very, very well.
What do you make of Auntie Gordon's comments that there's a more open style of play in the Champions League and the Premier League is just more physical, and therefore the top Premier League teams benefit from basically teams not necessarily sitting back and waiting to hit a Premier League team on the counter. They try and give it a go. I put this on the radio last night, and Chris Sutton just went, that's rubbish. It's simply because Anthony Gordon's had a good season in the Champions League and not in the Premier League. But then, I watched Bodo Glimt away to Atletico Madrid last night, and they gave it a go. And I suppose, a lot of these teams in the Champions League are successful and elite within their own country and think, we are going to give this a go. We aren't just going to sit back.
English football is at the vanguard of football right now. What is happening in the Premier League is what everybody's trying to imitate. And what's happening is what I was saying earlier. The domination is not via the ball. The domination is via squeezing space and time. And as soon as you lose the ball, just being there. That's what Anthony Gordon means, as well as, of course, set pieces and etc. But you have to be very quick in your decisions, and rhythm must change. You have to be very, very fast. So that's what's happening in England, and it fits very well when they go into Europe, because all the teams in Europe generally, we are a step behind. We're doing the control of the ball. We're doing the domination of the ball. And then, of course, English sides feel that everything is a bit easier because they're not squeezed in so much, because there's not so much pressure on them. And it's easier in a way when you have been, for the rest of the season, having to take a lot of decisions very quickly to go and then find that there is more space. We're behind. In England, you're ahead. So Anthony Gordon, who's a creative player, will like a little bit of more space and time. Can he have that? Not in England, because that's where football is going and everybody's following that way. But at the moment, we're not there yet. So take advantage. You should have no pressure. And we said that earlier in the season. 4 teams in the semi-finals. And if you don't, it's failure.
Wow. And that's purely on the basis of the style that's being played, because that would then say that there's no room for a Barcelona, who we've all been entertained by so much over the last few seasons, even though they've fallen at the final hurdle last season and gave us one of the great games. There's no room for them to get to a final or a semi-final.
I'm exaggerating just for debate and clickbaits, but actually
that's what I'm all about.
Barcelona,
that's one. Yeah.
That's why you're on.
That clip is going to go in. You'll see in the socials. But obviously, there is room for surprise. Barcelona are very good in the offensive phase, very, very good, and very good in the defensive transition, trying to get the ball back, but very bad in tracking back and defending in their own box. Very bad. They haven't improved on that. They have a full back now as a centre-back who's never played as a centre-back. That's what they're using at the moment. And they've got a centre-back played as a centre midfielder. And it's not working for them at all the levels that it should work. But you've got Lamine Yamal. And if Rafinha reaches the level of last season, and that is the only thing between the Premier League and, say, PSG, Real Madrid and Barcelona, we've got top players. The top players, they're still attracted by, yes, the wages that can be matching the Premier League wages, but also the aura of being at Real Madrid, being Barcelona, or being at Bayern, or being at PSG. And those guys, when things are very, very close, they can take the game in a different direction. But look what happened last season to Barcelona. The best Barcelona of this generation. They failed against Inter. What did they concede? 5 goals in two games. You cannot win the Champions League like that.
But then that leads me on to what I was going to ask you next. For all that we've talked about, and styles and money and so on and so forth, do you still think there's this sort of historical inferiority complex that can play a role when you get to the knockout stages? And I kind of feel we did it last night on the telly a bit. You're jumping ahead and going, oh, right, okay, Real Madrid and Inter Milan are in the same bracket here as Manchester City, for example. Paris Saint-Germain and someone, I think I might be in the same bracket as Chelsea, and I haven't got them all. But do you know, you plan ahead and think, oh my, they might get Paris Saint-Germain, or they might get Real Madrid, or they might get Bayern Munich. Do you think that you've described it as the aura of the elite players who are still at those clubs? I wonder whether we also have that inferiority complex historically.
You should have, because last season you had the same money and only Arsenal made it into the semi-final. So you should have a little bit of a complex and a fear, or whatever you want to call it. But that's you and me and us discussing it and fans. I can tell you, in the training ground, Arsenal knows exactly what they have to do to beat anybody. And so does, Spurs, even Spurs. And so those City and Chelsea, they know what they have to do. And of course, when you Chelsea and you go to the Maradona Stadium like last night, and when it gets to 2-2, both teams needed a goal, but Antonio Conte looks at his bench. He had 5 less players on the bench than Chelsea. This is wealth, but it's injuries, etc. Meanwhile, Chelsea were bringing on Cole Palmer and Chabola and Gittens, internationals. You think, okay, yeah, 1 hour I can last at your level, but after that it should be the English teams going and taking the next step and winning.
So this, again, everything you're talking about there, as well as the style on the pitch, you're talking about money, effectively, because to have those squads, it's about money. So 50% of the top 30 Deloitte's list of rich clubs, of the wealth of the clubs, come from the English top flight, right? And 6 of the top 10 come from the English top flight. So where are they going to catch up on this? I mentioned briefly developing San Siro, Nou Camp and Bernabeu have also got increased capacity, but where else? How else are they going to catch up if it is about money?
First thing is the paradigm has not changed, by the way, because you've had this much money than us for 15 years, and in the last 10 years you only won the Champions League twice. So we're still not there yet, but quite clearly it's going that way. The Super League already exists, is in the Premier League, and for everybody to catch up, you've got to do, like, for instance, La Liga and Serie A are doing. The money that comes in, a percentage, clubs are forced to put into infrastructures, building new stadiums that will raise the money. Real Madrid and Barcelona are doing that. The rest, not so easy, but at least the training grounds are better, so you can do more work, you can impress better players in the likes of Villarreal or teams of the mid-class of teams. But it's when the difference of the money that comes in through foreign rights, for instance, it's so isn't like 1.9 billion for England, and we just like 800 million or something like that. The only competition that we've been able to match in the last 15 years, well, you have been unable to make money dominate football, is through coaching and developing players and being clever. That takes you to a place, because if the guys that have been doing that end up in the Premier League, then, yeah, it's not going to be easy.
So 4 English semi-finalists you're going for, are you, Guillem?
Say 3 plus 1. One could be PSG or Bayern or a good Barcelona.
Okay,
but
which two are losing out then?
Arsenal have got everything to win anything, and it doesn't work anymore. That what is it that you're wolves in the winter and sheep in the spring, because of you stop being as physically dominating, because they can change the way of playing. Arsenal have got that. Even Liverpool have got that compared to European sides. The third one could be whatever. City, again, know-how. Pep Guardiola keeps talking about, we nobody in Europe. Well, they are a little bit more experienced than they were. Still, 3 plus 1.
Guillem, thank you so much.
All right, cheers.
Tobin Heath has joined us in the studio to talk about the inaugural Champions Cup. This was supposed to sort out which was the best league, whether it was the North American Women's Soccer League or whether it was the WSL, but we're not going to get the final that everybody was craving.
Yeah, it was. I mean, maybe it wasn't meant to be. Maybe the debate just needs to be ongoing. But I don't think this is going to be a one-off conversation, right? In order to determine this, we're going to have this tournament for the next 10 years to really solidify who's the best team, who's the best league. But it's these new formats that are allowing us to be able to actually see for the first time an African club team playing against a European club team. That's never happened before in a competitive tournament. So this is the growth of the global game. The game doesn't just exist in the UK. The game doesn't just exist in the US. I know we want to debate back and forth, but Corinthians comes in and goes, hey, we're here too. And that's important.
Can you give us a little bit of history about how we've ended up with this inaugural one?
And why now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, with the growth of the women's game, it's important that we continue to feed every part of this ecosystem. And club women's football is booming. I mean, you can see here, especially with the Arsenal and the effect that they're having both on the pitch and off the pitch. The business is booming. The valuations have increased substantially for these clubs. Women's football is serious business now, and it requires serious competitions. And obviously, like I continue to iterate, this is a global game. It doesn't just exist in a couple parts of the world. So to be able to feed the whole ecosystem of women's sports is important. And we saw last summer with the Men's Club World Cup that we need to feed both the international and the domestic leagues in order to see the full growth of this infrastructure. And it's encouraging other countries to also invest in the domestic league, because it's going to increase their visibility, it's going to increase their market, and it will increase the competition that they have on the international level as well.
The big criticism and problem of the men's version, there were several criticisms of it, but one of them, and it's to do with the growth of the game, is the money on offer to clubs who were at the Club World Cup was so huge that it can then distort the domestic leagues in different continents with the amount of money that those teams got then going back into their domestic leagues. They are going to be considerably richer than a lot of their counterparts. Would that be a worry here if this competition continues to grow? Do Rabat go back with prize money that would distort their league?
I mean, at this point, in the women's game, there's no level of distortion that money at this point is even a question about. We need absurd amounts of money in the women's game. We're not even close to scratching the surface. So yes, this is an incredible prize pool that was awarded in this tournament. But before we can even have that conversation, we have to look at the global ecosystem of the whole of football. And we're not even close to the conversation of any type of money being enough in the women's game to really affect the types of things that you're referring to right now.
One of the things that, ahead of speaking to you, we were chatting about, and we're both across a lot of men's football, other sports, and this podcast we talk about a lot of sports. This doesn't seem to have had the visibility that if I was Michele Kang putting the money into this that she has, 1.7 million, who of course is the owner of 3 clubs globally and owns the London City Lionesses. What I would want a little bit more exposure for this, and I would want it to have a position in the calendar where it could shine on its own, not be in the week, that the Champions League has reached its denouement in the league phase.
Yeah, example. I mean, if you have a scheduling solution, because right now, both on the men's and women's side, scheduling is probably one of the most hardest headaches, right? And then in our game, we're talking about, you obviously have European football, which is the giant on the men's side, but in our game, we're talking about, and it showed here in this competition, we have, leagues like the Brazilian League and also the American League, where they're completely flip-flopped. So we have Gotham and Corinthians in their preseason, and we have Arsenal and Astra that are in their season. So there's never going to be any perfect solution to this problem. And in the women's game, you got to start. I know that everybody's like, it's not what we want it to be, or the marketing or the timing or whatever. You have to start. And this tournament will continue to grow. The visibility and the understanding of it will continue to grow, similarly to the Men's Club World Cup. And I know in football, in the history of football, especially on the men's side, it's really challenging to create anything new. But in women's football, actually, it's a really exciting time because we can create new things. And it's tough because there is a religious aspect to football that it's no, this is the way football works. But women's football has the ability almost to reinvent and reimagine the way that sport can be. And I think for anybody that's exciting, because the world is certainly different, 100 years from when we first started playing this sport that it is today. So in that way, I think we have to encourage these new formats and these new competitions that are eager to put money into the ecosystem. So at any level that we have people that are stepping up, raising their hand saying, I want to invest in this, we should be opening the doors to innovation and to the type of progress that we're seeing and interest that we're seeing, because you got to start somewhere. And this is the first iteration. And, it's a trophy.
Do you see it taking place this time of year? Because one of the accusations as well, Chappers, has been that it benefits Arsenal, obviously, to be in its
hugely.
home city and its home training grounds and, being able to use all their facilities they normally do and be at this stage of the season. Or do you see it moving around?
No, I definitely see it moving around. I think this is a great time for it. And look, it won't be perfect, right? Because the calendar isn't perfect and we're all at different parts of the calendar, but there will always be an excuse, right? For instance, the World Cup and the Olympics in our American calendar is in the middle of our season. It's obviously at the end of the European season. So it's just having to navigate and having to set up your team, where your team is at in this calendar for this competition. How will you win? Period. And the answer won't be the same for a Gotham or for an Arsenal. But that is football, right? You take the situation and you figure out what you can do with the situation and how you can be effective in it. And for the Arsenal, they're being rewarded. They're being rewarded for a club that has shown up both on and off the pitch. I truly believe that even them participating in this because they won the Champions League against Barcelona, which many people were shocked about. I think the football gods are rewarding the Arsenal for doing the work both on and off the pitch to get to this place. To honestly, I believe they are going to lift the trophy, and I believe they are well deserving to lift the trophy. Certainly,
I know what you're saying. They certainly are at the vanguard, aren't they, of innovation, and they have been the most committed club in terms of their women's team since day dot, really, in the professional era. You played there, you understand what it takes and how committed and how much support Arsenal give their women.
Absolutely, yeah.
I know it's highly unlikely, but if Corinthians won this, what? And then the thinking was, I tell you what, they've won it, deserve it. Let's give this event to Brazil next year. How would that affect the event? What would the attention be like in Brazil? You talk about sort of the growth of the game and where it is growing.
Yeah.
What benefit would that be
I suppose with the Brazil World Cup
and South
coming
America?
down the track as
exactly.
well.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Fantastic,
Yeah, it would be huge. I mean, I guess, should we find out? Should we find out what football looks like somewhere else? Also, I will say the Corinthians fans at the stadium, there obviously is a history of the team here in London and the name of the team, Corinthians, and where it came from. But the fans were absolutely phenomenal. And I think, again, at the Emirates, those fans are going to show up. There are a lot of Brazilian fans here in London that I think will show up for this team because that has a massive fan base. And honestly, I do hope in a way that these teams and these clubs are being rewarded for honestly their investment, not their investment today, but their investment that they've stayed in it. They've stayed investing. And, who knows where the next tournament will take place. But the fact that we are growing the value of these brands, not just in their local markets, right? When you go to Arsenal is a global brand. And that's because they recognize that they had to go outside the UK to have more viewership, to have more fans. And they did that. And they did it in an amazing way. I'm a product of that. I'm from the US as an Arsenal fan. But here, these new teams like Gotham, what do Gotham fans look like here in London? Did we convert any fans? And I think that's the opportunity. If these teams, these clubs want to say, we want to be a global brand, you got to get out of your local markets. And these are wonderful ways to actually convert new fans and actually kind of connect the web of women's football globally in a way that could become effective and obviously grow the sport.
Well, an individual who seems to be connecting the web of women's football is Michele Kang in terms of ownership of 3 big clubs on 2 continents, Lyon, and then I mentioned a moment ago London City Lionesses and Washington Spirit as well. Is the prime and main investor into this competition. So she's potentially got a team that she owns who could make it to the final or into the finals of this competition. Is that a conflict of interest that we should be concerned about at all?
I mean, Michele Kang is a force. I think this is another example of what you can do in women's football right now. If you want to affect the global landscape of football, you could be a single person right now. Michele Kang is single-handedly investing more money and more resources than some whole organizations are in global football. And she's doing it in a way that is unashamed, that is new, that is definitely rubbing a lot of people because no, we don't do that. Yes, conflicts, but right now, navigating in gray area is so effective. Don't be defined yet. Go out and, if you have the resources, it's incredible to see a woman that has the authority and has the finances to go and have multi-club ownership, have the first independent club in the Premier League for the women. It's incredible what is happening and completely
You welcome
disruptive.
the grey areas.
Oh, I mean, I think for any business person that's trying to create ownership or affect the landscape as it currently is, the gray area is the best thing. They always say don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness. And right now it's don't ask for permission, just go out and do it. Because right now there's a lot of space, and people like Michele Kang recognize it. This is an incredible businesswoman, and she's recognized the business in women's football before anyone else.
Was the contract that she's given Trinity Rodman at Washington Spirit, what does that tell us? I'm kind of slightly confused about what that tells us about the NWSL, the WSL, whether it tells us anything at all about the state of those leagues. Does it tell us that, she stayed there because that's a better league? Does it tell us that she is clearly somebody with a huge following, and she's, from the national team perspective, she's enormous, that it was a smart move from Michele because she's such a figurehead?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is Michele Kang is, is a talent almost in herself and what she's doing. But, she's one area of the landscape she can affect is, as a player. And from the beginning of the Washington Spirit, almost in her fight for even being able to have ownership of that team, she has queen-make Trinity Rodman. She knew Trinity Rodman was going to be a star from the start. She paid her like a star before she even really got a start. And her ability to recognize that this was going to be a global superstar and have control over the destiny of this global superstar from a club level is absolutely genius. And honestly, if Trinity Rodman wanted to go play overseas, she could have gone to Michele Kang's teams. And the ability to be able to manipulate and affect the market in this way, some people might say like this is, there's a lot of gray area to this, but I mean, this is a woman that has been able to take a very firm stance and a clear position of power over a lot of parts of leagues, teams, and player decision-making. And she's the person that's going to reap the rewards for it. Is it for the
greater good?
Oh, yeah. I mean, anytime you're going to be the valuations of teams are going up, the players' salaries are going up. Anytime this is happening, obviously it's going to increase for all. Because there's a player that's like, $2 million, they're thinking to themselves, well, I'm pretty good. I'm almost as good as Trinity Rodman. My salary should be well above $1 million.
But do other clubs have those benefactors?
They're going to have to. So in the U.S., the teams used to be owned by, tens of millionaires. Now, you have to be a billionaire to own an NWSL team. That's completely different stakes here. Completely different wages here. And that's the changes, because the valuations of the teams, I think Angel City is $260 million valuation. They bought their team for $2 million. That was 4 years ago? It's crazy money and it's crazy growth. And in order to be an owner in the NWSL now, you have to be a billionaire.
So, but that then trickles down, in your opinion, to everybody. It doesn't increase the haves and the have-nots.
Well, then there is the responsibility for a tournament like this. This tournament doesn't just feature NWSL clubs and WSL clubs. This tournament features the winners from each continent. And this is the global exposure that is needed for the complete growth. And this is honestly where I think women's football needs to be very specific and rigorous in what their responsibility is to the whole world and what the game means. Because these moments, especially in the infancy of women's football, is very important to not just get centric on these markets that have the history or the fan base or the money already. But I think it is our global responsibility to make sure that we don't just focus on one part of the world, because the greatest opportunity this game has ever given us is the global nature of it and its ability to unite, to evolve, and to change society. And we can't just do it from one or two places.
Who's going to win it?
Oh, the Arsenal. Come on. Come on. Yeah, they definitely. I mean, don't overlook Corinthians, though, because, we saw what happened in the last match. You don't go out to play these games. You go out to win them. Gotham, they played that game and they dominated that game, but they did not win that game. And Arsenal will be sure to win the game.
Thank you so much for coming in, Tobin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Sports Agents
with Gabby Logan and Mark Chapman.